So how do you do your job today? How do you run your business? Do you like it? Sure. Wait a second. You use this ATS, but watch this. What's really important to you? Well, it needs to have all the functionality. It needs to fit my segment. You need to be able to migrate my data. Whoa. Okay, well, what else do you use? This calling system, this texting solution, on and on and on. It's like, I thought we were just talking about an ATS, but really what we're talking about is you have all this software and infrastructure that runs your entire organization.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenley, and welcome to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today, we've got a great mic drop episode ahead of us, but before we get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, while other days we cover things like trending topics. Stop by every Tuesday for a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. Some days we open it up for Q&A. Listeners can drop in questions for us that they'd like to hear us take on, so send those to us at podcast@loxo.co. And occasionally, days like today, you'll hear a mic drop episode where Matt joins us to share something that he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. All right, Matt, 530. That is how many ATS providers are out there, according to G2. So that's not even all encompassing, but that's a lot of options. And so that's naturally going to lead to the question of like what many of you have asked, should be asking, like, well, how do I know which one's right for me? That's a lot of options. Where do I go with? So you've said a few times you've had 1, 2, or thousands of conversations with recruiters over the years, coming from different segments, coming from different sizes, and they're all coming back and asking the same question at some point in the time as I go through these processes. So today, what I'm looking forward to covering with you is like, how do recruiters decide on their ATS or CRM? I mean, any of their systems, really, questions that you should be asking the next time this conversation comes up, and then what you should really be thinking about also in the long term with what this means for you, your business, your strategy. So loaded topic, but I hope you're ready for this one.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm super excited for today.
Yeah. So 500, over 500 platforms, just absolutely blows my mind. So as we said, you've spoken to countless organizations at this point, and it's figuring out like, what do they care about? What do they get the most from? So what have you learned from all these conversations over the year about how people approach this?
Yeah. So it took me a long time, many years to figure this out. When you say countless, I mean, I'm not embellishing this, no joke. First principal sales for 11 years. That's, over probably 8,000 different meetings across the globe with different organizations. So you get to see a lot and learn a lot, right? In my opinion, what we're going to talk a bit about today, though, is that these type of lessons, for anyone who's listening, is, these can be applied across all B2B enterprise categories. And I truly believe that. When it comes to platforms of record, systems of record. From the ATS CRM perspective, though, I think a few years ago we actually posted it. We thought there was closer to 1,000. I remember a couple people online were like, "There's no way there's 1,000," but where you found it over 500, there's no joke. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ATS CRMs, and this is a big part of the market dynamic right now. So there's two camps generally in recruiting software. You have, I'm in the market, which means like, hey, we have this committee, we're intentional about what we're going to do, and we're pretty committed to making a change. And you have a whole process for it, right? We're in market. The other one is just curiosity. And that one's, in general, especially when you come from a system of record software, you're running up against the status quo and change management. You're not going to change, right? It's really difficult, but you can. But what they evaluate software on, we'll talk about, is the same. It doesn't matter. It's just very different motion, sales motion and marketing motion and all that. But they're just curious. They're kicking tires, or they're like, hey, once a year we come up for breath. We just want to make sure we don't fall behind, and we're just checking out software to keep up, right?
So with those people, I always wonder, that's a lot of time spent just like coming up for breath. Are they looking to see if enough has changed where it is worth coming up against that change management and saying like, we should do this? Or is it, we want to learn to see what some of the cutting edge technology is doing, and then going back to our platform we've used for the last 10 years and saying, hey, is this on your roadmap? Is this something that we should be thinking about? Or is this just the new shiny thing that people are trying to get us to buy?
Yeah, great question. So, and a lot of those people who don't know, we'll talk about a lot about segmentation, and the nuances and within recruitment are, I think, more acute than probably any other. Sales is very different. You have like SMB, mid market, enterprise, right? And of course, you always have your own ICP and everything. But recruitment is all about segmentation. So different. That's how they select software. Even personas within that. But it's on the agency side specifically, you have this long tail, and that means 1 to 7 users is the majority of the market. Really finicky. They love tech. They pay for a lot of tech, and they just poke around and get on any and every demo, right? So they'll do it a lot. They'll kick tires, but and they, that's just the market. They want to know. They're curious. They have lots of time in their hands, and they're usually small team, right? So they can move the needle pretty quick, and they're open to it, and they enjoy that. They love that part of the market. The larger and more sophisticated organizations don't have time to do that, and the change management, internal, moving the ship of a giant company is not going to happen. So people are like more sophisticated. They slow down, but yeah, those camps again are bifurcate a little bit too on obviously size and segmentation quite a bit.
And so obviously that's going to lead to different questions coming from each of those camps or maybe it's not different questions, but they think that they're special to themselves. So before we get into, it's just like, how might someone who works at an executive search firm be evaluating this compared to the 360 desk recruiter, compared to the member of a giant RPO? I know that you often think a lot about kind of like just how has technology evolved over time, like, and how that has informed not the recruiting philosophy that you take, but it's almost limited you in a sense with like your tech can only do so much. So you're kind of at the mercy of whatever the tech can keep up with for you. And I know you've looked at this from the angle of like Web 1.0, Web 2.0, Web 3.0. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for you putting this together and us taking the time for these podcasts, because I have to, normally, as you know me, I don't prep as much for these things, but I love it when we do this, because this one forced me to kind of crystallize some stuff we've been talking about a lot, and articulating the category, right? A new type of category is really difficult, in product marketing and what that means. But what I'm going to boil this back to is why this applies across all B2B categories, and here's why. And here's what is the difference. So this is super important, and it took me a long time, a decade, to figure this out. What happens in Web 1.0, you go from desktop software back in the day, and Sam's heard this a few times. These companies were monolithic, massive organizations, the Oracles of the world, right? You have tens of thousands of employees. That's who built software. That is software, right? Bare metal, boring software, but that's the infrastructure and capital to build that software is, these are titans. What happened with the internet and SaaS is not just distribution, but suddenly that allowed lots of different small organizations and indie hackers almost to take a look at an existing piece of software, and you don't have to come up with anything. You already know, just copy it. Copy this piece of software, put it on the web, create an online experience where you can log in and call it a day, right? And so that's exactly what happened in Web 1.0. All these companies, and you had to raise a lot of capital generally with .com, and people did. You've raised venture. You have sophisticated companies that do blitz scaling. They grow really fast, and but they do it in every industry. And suddenly SaaS exploded, and that's been the industry for 2 decades. Well, now what? Well, now what happens is it's a dime a dozen. Differentiation in the market is really difficult. So and you also don't want to die, right? So some of the very best companies, especially ATS CRM, you would suddenly have these new best-in-class companies that have amazing teams and sophisticated venture capital that were saying, hey, we're going to disrupt the incumbent. Greenhouse, for example, or Levers on the in-house side were the first, in my opinion, Web 2.0. On the agency side, it took longer to get going, but you had some pop up, and there's even like a small one, Cortivity, back in the day. And for those who've ever heard of it, I'm sure there's some in Europe, but you have a few that were like Web 2.0. And what they did is in Web 2.0, all you do is take the existing ATS, what the feature set is generally, and you create a new UI. Let's make it a little bit more user-friendly, easier to use. Instead of a single page app, you work on design systems, and that's about it, right? For any fans of 0 to 1, Peter Thiel's book, all software is a commodity. It's going to drive all the software cost to zero, right? There's zero profit. And that's what happens. It explodes. You have a dime a dozen vendors, and now the market is just super confused, right? They're like, I don't really care. Every single thing I look at, I do these RFIs and RFPs, and it's just an ATS. I could care less. And so what I'm talking about now, and I'm going to kind of talk about Web 1.0, 2.0, and how the market evaluates software. This is why I know for a fact with all these conversations, what's going to happen is people that are purchasing software are, especially recruiting companies and organizations, they're not experts, right? At the category level. How could they be, right? They have a job. They might even come up once a year, but they're not thinking about it as their full-time job. So when they come to you in the past, it's like, oh wait, right, John or Teresa, they've been on 12 ATSs through their careers. They're an expert evaluator, right? And it's like, well, yeah, but you were on Brass Ring and Connexa and, and I won't bring them all up, but you could talk about a million. And it's like, that's how they come into the evaluation. And they're like, here's my RFI. Do you have all of these features and functions and checklists? And if you don't, let's not talk. And it's like, whoa, let's slow down and talk about the old world. What's also kind of reinforces this is that there's lots of analysts and consultants who their whole job is to help their clients select the best software, right? And there's even like some tools now that help companies pick the best ATS CRM. And that's the same thing. They're like, click these buttons, fill out based on their UI, what you think you need or don't need. And then it spits out the score, right? And it's the same thing. It spits people into these incumbents, the Oracles and the Taleos and the Bullhorns and all of these companies that have lots of features and functions. That's how RFIs are built. But again, those are Web 1.0. And some of them are Web 2.0 if they're lucky. It's a legacy platform. And I'm going to circle back to what's about to happen. So now with Web 2.0, it's like, this is how buyers actually show up. They show up, they think they're generally like, hey, do you know which camp are you in? Are you in the market or are you just kicking tires? It doesn't matter, right? Whichever one they say. Okay, great. Well, let's talk a bit about what do you use today? Because you run a business, you have a system that works for you. Clearly it works, or you wouldn't have a system in place. So how do you do your job today? How do you run your business? It's a system of record, right? Do you like it? Sure. We don't really know, but we're open. Wait a second. You use this ATS, but watch this. What's really important to you? Well, it needs to have all the functionality. It needs to fit my segment, right? Which is very difficult. You need to be able to migrate my data. Whoa. Okay, well, what else do you use? This calling system, this texting solution, on and on and on. It's like, I thought we were just talking about an ATS, but really what we're talking about is you have all this software and infrastructure that runs your entire organization and all these different personas and departments. You're looking for a consultant to audit what you do today and how to get you into the future. Because if you want to stay where you're at, you're just fine. It works for you today, but you're trying to get in the future, right? And that's that's starting to get to where we're at with Web 3.0. And I can get into like more specifics and features and all of that, but it truly is not about the RFI. Every ATS in the planet has the same stuff. It takes a decade to build that. 7 years to 10 years. It takes a long time. Everyone has been around for a while. They have really good, strong capabilities. It takes a decade. That's not why people are choosing software anymore. That's table stakes.
This is really interesting. You brought up a couple points that I want to get into with you. So yeah, the RFI and the checklist. Here's what we need. Well, this is all based on historic things that you only know exist. If you aren't pushing the envelope or you don't know, like there might be a better way, then you're saying, I want to keep doing things the way that I always have been or what I know. But what you and I both know with like the talent intelligence platform and everything else, like what if there is something that's better? What if there is something that can make this 10 times better for you? Would you be open to that? So that's where it can be limiting. If you only are submitting those RFIs, RFPs, where it's like, if you don't meet all these boxes, you don't get this score, then you might rule out something that could be better for you over the long term. And that's why we say, don't just think now, but think about the long-term organization. Grow or die is kind of that mentality. And then I really like that you brought up, it's like, well, what do you want? Well, does it have this functionality? Are you fit for my segment? Does it have this data? And it quickly goes beyond, you're not talking about an ATS anymore. Like you said, you're talking about your phone system. You're talking about your outreach. Like you're going past an ATS. You're talking about your entire workflow at this point. And so when you get to that level, one thing that I've always said is like, or thought, you go to the different providers and like, well, look at all of our integration partners. And the biggest thing it works well when you sell it, it's horrible when you go and buy it and realize it, is integration does not mean seamless data transfer, seamless workflow. Like it means that, yeah, it can port stuff over left and right, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy part of your workflow. It's probably going to be the same bolt-on that you did before, but it's coming through a little bit less disjointed than it was before. So yeah, this whole like Web 1.0, Web 2.0, that's why I'm excited to see where you're taking this conversation, where you've got the vision for how this can go. Because I think this is a part, it's like people don't know what they don't know. And that's what we really want to just help them. It's like whether you use Loxo or not, like great. But we just want you to start to think and realize like how could things be if you just make sure that you don't root yourself in the old way all the time.
Well, and I think you and I, especially, like I would love to have this conversation. I could speak about this with people in the market for, all day long. And, it'd be a fascinating conversation in different ways. But I think it's important to help people understand how you would evaluate an ATS CRM. But again, it does apply to, in my opinion, to all categories, and it's going to happen. A couple, like anecdotally, here's a couple things. In general, with any software, B2B software, and where this starts to get into kind of Web 3.0 is you have Maslow's law, right? You have your most basic foundational needs have to be met. And it sounds pretty obvious to people, but again, people don't, I didn't know this. You'll never know this until you've been in a software company. And this is why also the incumbents in this space are not going to go away. It takes 7 years. You need $100 million in capital to get to feature parity with the current market leaders in the ATS CRM, right? 7 years. That's not easy to do. But again, those are must-haves. It's not like those are going to go away. You have to be able to handle jobs and contacts, blah, blah, blah. Vast majority of the marketplace are, when they come to one of those two camps, we're in market or we're just curious, we've heard a lot, we're sick of X, Y, and Z, we saw an ad, whatever it might be, right? They're stuck in just the table stakes though, and that's what it is. As soon as you could say whatever you want and how you would look at vendors, the difference is very stark, and I'm going to talk about why there's only a few on the market that are Web 3.0 across B2B software. You know it when you see it. It's like they all sound the same. Like, how are you guys any different from your 90 competitors? Because everyone's website says the same thing. It's like, yeah, it says the same thing. They all sound the same, right? Marketing, sales, it all sounds the same. When you see it, people are like, oh my God, this is radically different. You're like, yeah, we're trying to tell you that, right? And so this is Web 3.0 software. If you need integrations, if you need Zapier, if you need consultants to build on top of Salesforce or HubSpot or Dynamics or whatever, you're building on top of a different old school vendor. These are the Web 1.0 world. This is legacy. It's going to go away. It does not work. There's a better way. And when Sam, you were talking about workflow, nobody cares what they use. In the past, it was like, you could have 10 options and it was like opinion, like whatever your opinion was, didn't really matter. What recruiters generally do is you're posting to job boards, you're going to job boards where the supply of candidates are, they're coming inbound, or you're going outbound, primarily sourcing on LinkedIn or these job boards, right? But now you have some sourcing tools. With recruiting in general, well, let me talk about Web 3.0 for a second. And I hope people don't mind. I try to share examples so everyone can kind of learn and understand. And I'm never, trying to nitpick or call out any companies or not, but I think it's just helpful. And, in general, I'm a very transparent person. But in my personal opinion, I think there's only a couple Web 3.0 platforms in the world. True Web 3.0. And I am biased. I truly believe Loxo was one of, if not the first ever to build a Web 3.0 platform. Apollo is a company that does some data stuff, is actually in my I think they did a great job copying our business model. But on the sales side, and I'm kind of joking a bit, but they are also, and they're emerging and they're going to be a dominant player. ZoomInfo is a direct competitor with them. ZoomInfo is more of a data player, but they're trying to do some workflow stuff. But ZoomInfo was not organically built from that, but they are. And ZoomInfo is a phenomenal company, one of the best CEOs in the world, in my opinion, what they're doing. The other two are two titans, Salesforce, HubSpot. HubSpot just acquired Clearbit. They get it. HubSpot is absolutely killing on it. We'll see what happens. I think HubSpot could potentially unseat Salesforce. They're probably the only company that can do it. But those are Salesforce and HubSpot. Salesforce was not. They were a CRM, a legacy system, and they've acquired bolt-on after bolt-on after bolt-on. Einstein, if anyone knows, back in the day, it was actually Relate IQ. Unbelievable. It was actually probably one of the first, you could argue they were one of the first Web 3.0. It was a CRM, and they started to apply like real-time updating data. So like this model's been, no one really quite understood it, but from a recruitment perspective, no one's ever looked at the whole landscape and the vision and said, well, wait a second, what is it required? It's not just that's table stakes, great. What are the jobs to be done? What are their personas? What are the workflows across segments? And how would those integrations work? Because why would you have an integration? Why would you tell a customer, hey, I'm sorry, we can't help you with that core job. You're doing that all day, every day. It's an upper right quadrant. Why don't you go duct tape something on with Zapier and download it and put on this API and use Google Docs to then kick it out to another tool to then, right? It's like, what? I just need to call people and have it auto log and reporting. Exactly. Like, can't you just build a UI with report? Sure. Circling back, you have Maslow's law. Now, what we're going to talk about is you go from Web 2.0, which is where most all ATSMs are today, all of them, even if they tell you they're not. We can compare and contrast, and Sam, you might grill me a bit for that in a bit, but here's where you know for a fact it kind of ends. As soon as you talk to or you're evaluating your RFI, just ask yourself, audit, what tools and like tech stack do you have today? Count how many they are, count how much you spend on each one, understand how many of your user licenses have access to each one of those and how much they're like logging in, adopting and using them. And just look at that. And so if you have a marketplace and you have lots of integrations that is core to your day-to-day workflow for those users, that's Web 1.0 or 2.0. It's that old school legacy way and it will go away. That is not Web 3.0.
That's a reality check for a lot of people, I think. And I was thinking in my head, mentally mapping, just even on my side in the marketing world, if I were to go and say, I've got 3 people on my team. If I went to look at all the data that we have that we use from different platforms, we use our own data from Loxo, we use HubSpot, we use, various ad platforms and anything else. It quickly breaks down when you go to see like who can access what. Then you go to Slack, you have someone asking like, hey, can you send me this data? Which it's probably the worst way to integrate or try to get things along when it's just like, to your point, what are we trying to have done here? At the end of the day, what are we trying to accomplish and how easy or difficult is that to do? Could it be done in a better way, especially for me as a marketer? So translate all that to recruiting. It's like, what do I need to get done? Can I do this as an exec recruiter? Can I do this as a, whatever type of that is? And I think that, I don't know, if you zoom out for just a minute, that's a hard conversation to have. And you'll probably realize that some things are not as simple or clear. And I know you and I talk about simplicity a lot. That's another rabbit hole that we can go down with this aside from the workflow, but we overcomplicate things thinking we're sophisticated, when in reality, like something you said the other day to me is like, you can be simple and sophisticated. It doesn't have to be complicated to be that.
Yeah, not at all. And this is where the geek in me, and I think what we're trying to solve for years, and the excitement is now where the rubber meets the road is like, okay, well, we kind of understand how people assess an ATS CRM. We understand where the market is. And I know we've talked quite a bit about this lately. A question I used to kind of ask, I'd pre-ask before I kind of do this discovery, understand the business, and then, okay, like we're about to show you some stuff and share some about what we do. Real quick, can I ask one quick question? Sure. Let me just ask this crazy, but if we had every feature you had, so feature parity, but every feature brick for brick was better in every way than what you do today. If it was cheaper, then you save money. You make more placements, you make more money, you make more hires because of it. And if it helps you like simplify and reduce software, but we can guarantee the data migration. It's not a pain. We can guarantee training and onboarding. So all of it, change management, all of it in a month, all of that. Like, is there any reason why you wouldn't change? Like, I don't think there's ever been, even with people have contracts, have 2-year contracts, they're like, no, not really. They say, of course not. Like you cannot do that. So like, but of course not. If it's better in every way, I am here to make my business as good as I can. I would not be wasting my own time or yours. Like if I don't want to just demo software to demo it. I want to be the world's best at what we do. I want to have a competitive advantage and get better. But like I've looked at ATS CRMs forever. So like, but I asked that question, right? And so the job of any Web 3.0 software platform or a software vendor in general, can you truly deliver and solve that for your customer? And you should strive for that. And that's what Web 3.0 can do. You can help make them way better. Of course, it's the UI and UX and design is a big part of it, world class. But you should make that user a super user, and they can do 100x, 50x, 10x, 5x more, right? And so they're more efficient or productive. And in the recruiting world, they make a lot more hires per recruiter. The hardest possible thing, though, it goes back to the decision process for these organizations and people, which is a hard part, is change management. Do you have the courage? Do you have the leadership? Do you have the culture that is willing to spend 2 months out of your comfort zone and forgetting what you've done for 2 decades to say, you know what, I can do this? And you know what, if I don't have the leaders that are willing to do this, your company you'll lay off more and more and more and more people. Your team will leave to an organization that did it and had the courage. And 4 years later, your income was cut by 75% because you refused to do that, right? So it doesn't really matter, but when you show people, the vast majority of individuals, you lead them to water, they're willing to drink. They will do it. It depends on your product adoption life cycle curve. Where are they on their courage, their leadership, their change management? They'll do it. You just have to decide, like, how do you help, but it's going to happen with all Web 3.0. It's a no-brainer. Like, people just realize, oh my God, this is really not as painful or scary or wasn't hard. This is awesome. Now we're killing it, right? Very different world.
That's what always blows my mind. I mean, all of us, anytime we embrace or come against something new, we have that fear of it being different, fear of change. But what is it that we're scared of specifically? Is it like, we know that it's going to be better for us at the end of the day, which is the ironic part. We feel it's like, oh, it's discomfort to go to the gym 3 times a week. It's discomfort to eat better food. It's discomfort to adopt this new technology, which I know will do better because there's that learning curve and you feel like you're going to do worse. But what you don't realize is if, like, you put those on trajectories it's like, I almost call it the logarithmic curve versus the exponential curve. Like, you're on a logarithmic curve at that point with what you're currently doing. Like, you might see 0.00001% improvements every day if you're lucky, but you're probably going to flatline or already have flatlined with your current state. Like, that's why you're at where you're at. But if you embrace that discomfort, then what you will realize is, like, once you get over that period, like, things are better. And then you look back, like you said, like 2 months later, you're laughing yourself, like, why did I wait so long to do that? But it's getting over that hurdle. And we as humans, like, we all strive to be better and we understand that. But yeah, it's that fear that makes no sense at the end of the day, where it's just like, you almost have to tell your inner voice or overcome whatever it is that's holding you back from that. And it's a no-brainer.
It is a no-brainer. And it's funny, just having these conversations organically. It's easy for me on this, side, or any supplier vendor, because you live and breathe it. You have enough conversations so you understand patterns, and that's your job, right? But in the fairness to recruiting organizations, again, it's not their job. And they only do this once in a while. And it's like risk, right? They're like, oh my God, if I make a mistake, my team is going to hate me. I'm going to get fired, or I make the wrong decision as a leader and everyone loses respect. And so it's much easier to do nothing, right? That's the job of a leader. Your job is to make decisions and to move to the future. That is what your team and organization are looking for you to do. And if you're a small boutique, who cares? Take a risk. And there's people evaluate their ATS CRM more than they do their spouse. It's a crazy, right? You can, like, check things out, log in, play with them. It's not as scary as people used to think. But the last thing I'll say is, again, the Web 1.0 world or Web 2.0, it really didn't matter what ATS you had. Everyone uses LinkedIn. Everyone uses a couple job boards generally. Even if they're not posting, they might source them. And you could have a Google Sheet or any database to store it. You could have Google Docs. That did not matter. The difference is workflow, and how the unified workflow, it actually is not the same way to recruit. You can do different strategies and tactics. And to Sam's point, like, you can compound things a lot quickly, just like marketing, right? MarTech was very similar. It exploded, even sales, of course, but you just used to have 10 different tools and you had to do things quite manually with way more people. Whereas now it's like, whoa, wait a second. Companies have spent the time to kind of consolidate this, remove steps, simplify, automate, and now you can do the same amount of work with one person that you could do with 10, right? And so imagine if you did that and you had an agency or search firm of 150 consultants, like, whoa, over 4 years, we just grew our revenues by 250%. Like, how is that possible? Well, I know this is probably not organically, but I was thinking a bit too about the big shops. So, and I would love to spitball here a bit on some of this stuff, but the segmentation I would like to talk a bit more about if we have time. If not, maybe we'll do a follow-up. But there's some mega titan on the agency side, mega titan companies, Korn Ferry, Robert Half's, everyone kind of knows who they are. But what's fascinating to me is, and again, all of this is my opinion, years ago, the right decision was for these organizations to build their own software because they're so good at recruiting and you have access to all this data and you could build your own unique kind of workflows that work well for your team. And it was like, okay, this really works. It's integrated with our billing. And so it's like, pretty decent. What's happening now, these organizations are making this same mistake over and over and over. And I see it. They're starting to try to keep up and try to do stuff with like AI, like, hey, their board talks to somebody, like, we have to do this stuff with AI, but they're not experts at this. They might have consultants, they might have a committee, but they're just trusting a random party of whoever those people are to make one decision for the future of their entire organization. And they're making the wrong selection. They're picking LLM vendors for AI. They're picking random pieces to the puzzle. And they're not understanding that it's actually the new table stakes are the foundation. It's Web 3.0. Without that, none of the rest matters. And they're going to spend a decade and fall behind. So certain companies, like recently, I won't bring them up. But certain organizations have signed some deals with like these random small like AI vendors, and their vendors will try to go all in. And now you're basically doing an acqui-hire. You're doing an acqui-hire to bring this one random company into your business, which as a exec search or like a professional recruiting organization, all motivations in the open market pressures to innovate and understand are gone. And you're not solving the fundamental issue. You're just focused on a best in breed solution anyway. That will not solve it. And the same thing will happen. So modern AI and where this market is going is actually going to consolidate the market, but it's going to benefit the small boutique nimble companies. And these mega companies, in my opinion, they can always try to acquire companies and keep doing that by growing, but they're going to get decimated because of their technology decision. It's a disadvantage for their recruiters and consultants by far, and that's just going to accelerate.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's going to simplify the sophistication of those big agencies, but because you have the engineers and the teams who understand the workflow at its core, they're then able to build that into a UI that is so simple and easy. And to your point earlier, it's just like, you look at it and you're just like, oh my God, I get it. This is so much better. This is so much easier. And this is now accessible to the 1, 2, 3 user shops, to any recruiter, but you don't have to be at these big organizations who used to have all this data, all this, everything that made it seem like they were the only people who could do sophisticated recruiting. This is now Web 3.0 is bringing that to the masses. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see those early adopters, what kind of gains they see, what happens to the laggards with it who stick to the old ways or anything else. But I think that it really is going to shine a pretty big light on just the success of the business. Just I think long-term, not just fear of change in the temporary, but like, what does this mean for you over the long course of your company's future?
Yep, completely. And it's one of these episodes we did a while ago is like the 50X recruiter. What was that? Do you remember what that was? The full stack.
Yeah.
Full stack recruiter and 50X recruiter, and decentralization of the web is happening. These themes across categories, it all kind of parlays into the same thing we're talking about. ATS CRM, it's decentralization. It's if you're truly world-class at what you do as a person or what you do as a business, you're first class in this, all of this technology, you're going to get so much better. You're going to get a lot done more quickly. But when you're picking your ATS CRM, the ways that you evaluate software are very different now, and there will be in the future, than the consultants and the RFIs and the RFPs of SaaS Web 1.0 and Web 2.0. Completely different. It's a new playbook. It's a new environment. And people that get that, they're already ahead of the curve. Ones that don't, they'll take their time, but that's good for everyone else who kind of gets it.
I love it. Well, I think this is going to have a lot of people thinking long and hard when they come across it, which is a good thing. You should be taking time to zoom out once in a while and really understand, what's my strategy? What are we working towards? Are we making the best long-term decisions for myself, for my organization, anyone else? So is there anything else that we missed or should include as we get ready to wind down?
No, it was a long one. Thanks for those of you who are with us. Thanks so much for listening. And, I know Sam will wrap it up, but, I'll go all day on this stuff, and, maybe we'll do a round 2 a bit more on specifics of features and maybe segmentation, if people are interested. But this was a fun one.
That'll be fun. Yes, let's go even deeper. Perfect. All right. Well, Matt, thank you as always for coming and joining for these. I always love these conversations where we just go deep, we geek out on some of the things that you've been thinking about, because I know it's like you see it because you have so many of these conversations. I know sometimes recruiters think like, am I crazy? Am I the only one feeling this? Or maybe, I talked to my buddy over here and we both noticed it, but we're not seeing anything in the market that's changing. So maybe we're just off. So hopefully this validates the way that some people are thinking and seeing things move along. As we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. If you like this episode and you're not sure where to go next, we'll link out to a similar episode in the show notes, and those are going to be able to be found in your favorite podcast streaming platform, as well as on our website, loxo.co/podcasts. Full video episodes are available on YouTube as well if you want to check those out. And if you have questions for us, if you want to hear Matt's take on anything else within the recruitment space, send those to us, podcast@loxo.co. So, all right, everyone, that is the show. That's yet another great mic drop episode with Matt. Until next time, bye, y'all.